everybody, once again. Welcome back to another bite-sized webinar. Usual culprits, we have Will Murphy, Carl, myself, Kate, and we are thrilled to be joined by Chris, who is one of our colleagues. I won't steal too much of your thunder, Chris. I'll let you say a bit about your practice in a moment. Again, we're just going to have a little casual chat, see what's gone right, see what's gone wrong, see what's happened in the week before. Carl, let's pass straight over to you. Wake you up. You look like you were just about to drop off.
Yeah, I've had a really exceptionally busy day today. So I was actually saying sort of off air to Chris. Well, actually, Chris brought it up, said that he's ready for the weekend. And we were talking about this in a previous webinar where, you know, you just feel a bit tired. I want to use another word, but I won't. And, you know, it's not been a particularly hectic or busy day. It's been straightforward fits and indexing, scanning, assessments, and you know, I just feel a little bit like, whoa, I just want to sit down and have a cup of coffee and do nothing else.
Do you think you're getting older, Carl? Or?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Well, you know, let's not mention birthdays. We've already been down this road. Already feel that I've made a mistake. But
so, I mean, is it because you're obviously having been in lockdown? I mean, we know, or I know, how busy you've been doing different things. So is it being back in surgery and having to put your surgery head back on, would you say?
Maybe. It's a little bit, maybe the mental thoughts process and then the hands-on thought process. And, you know, I mean, I've been doing mental things, homeschooling for a start off, learning grammar, you know, prepositions and modal verbs and
you've always done mental things as long as I've known you.
And so you know, I don't know what it is. Maybe I just don't want to be back at work. No, it's strange. And it was a couple of practices. Obviously, went up to see Chris and learning Chris's SOPs and you know, kindly talking through the processes that they've got. But I won't take Chris's thunder, but and explaining what they do in the practice, which is really impressive. And then again today, a different practice, slightly different SOPs again, it's getting used to the way that they work. And listening to, I mean, that was in Birmingham, that's Sally Park, and listening to the concerns that some of the staff have got and how still new it is for them and what they can and what they can't do, because they've, Will, you might come in here, they need a couple of staff that haven't been fit tested yet, so they haven't got anybody spare to do AGPs if an AGP crops up, because they don't always, you can't always expect to have a diary and not have an AGP maybe crop up, and then what do you do? And they're ready for that, but they didn't have the necessary staff if that was going to be a regular thing, and also the time that you have to do if that's going to happen. So they have made arrangements for that, and thankfully that was the case and it all went really smoothly. But I can imagine if you've got a practice with multiple people in it or only one room and certain times in the diary, that's going to be really difficult to kind of manage if you don't actually almost treat almost every patient as if they're going to potentially be an AGP patient. So I think it's getting your head around that, and they've done that really well in terms of predicting what was going to be and the use of the spare surgeries, the interesting doffing and donning areas, and getting me temperature taken again. This time I was normal, so I was actually alive, which was good to understand. And a different kind of flow, because they've got it in the practice, so it's in one door and out another door, and the patients are sort of sitting in the car. There's a car park, so it's slightly different, but yeah, you know, generally went really smoothly, as it did with yours, Chris. You know, you sent through how it was all going to happen before we started, so it was good to get all that information so that there isn't any kind of guesswork going on, only for the patients as well, but for me as a clinician walking into a new practice. So it was all right. It's just I'm getting old. And I need reminding what the SOPs are. Is this okay? Can I do this? Am I allowed to? What can I keep this? Can I keep this on? Do I take this off? And Paula will know what color underwear I'm wearing because she walked in on the changing room. So thankfully I wasn't commando today.
Don't encourage him, Will. Don't laugh.
I'm glad I've been doing Joe Wicks.
Yeah, but eating a donut watching.
She was only in there for 3 or 4 minutes, so I didn't have to tense for too long.
Is that what she told you? Just 3 or 4 minutes.
I think I heard her thrown up.
Anyway, bringing this back, Will, how's your week been since we spoke?
Do you know what? So far, I feel like I've done a lot of talking, to patients, just kind of like, how's it for you? And all this sort of stuff, it's, and I don't know, it sort of reminded me what a sort of personal kind of relationship we have with patients as well. We think and talk a lot about teeth, and we've talked about all that sort of stuff. But actually, what I've probably realised this week is that I've probably missed having the general chit chat with patients. Especially as I've been in my surgery for quite a long time as a general practice, and I guess at the moment in Newell Street, probably there's bits and pieces of the implants going on, but there's an awful lot of general dentistry that I've been, picking up and doing again. So, I've sort of been quite enjoying that and that sort of personal side of interaction with the patients. So that was the big thing that I thought about this week. All the AGP stuff is almost becoming second nature to us now. We've got our, shower curtain gowns hanging up and, a nice supply of masks sitting there. So there's no panic about that. And everybody's pretty good at sorting out the diary. So we kind of know that we're working between 2 surgeries so that when the AGP is in there, it's almost like we just put our gear on, get on with it. When we're finished, leave the surgery and get on with other stuff in the second surgery, and then sort of back in, have a little tidy up, and off we go. I think it's just treating it as normal now, really. So that's, that's the thing that I've got out of this week, really, how we've sort of slipped into that pattern. So we're very lucky that we've organised ourselves to have 2 surgeries per clinician. And actually, I think we've been reasonably productive as such, because so many people have come in with broken bits and pieces and needing crowns, inlays, and fillings and that kind of thing. So I've sort of brushing up on the old dentistry skills again, which is quite nice to know that they're still still in the locker should you need them. I've also been generating ideas for business moving forward as well, just sort of putting in place some of that patient referral and recommendation stuff that I always talk about doing with the staff, but kind of never always get round to it because we've been busy. And so I'm mindful that with things like implants that we do, there can be higher value, although worth it, but higher value. And again, what a patient's income is going to be like moving forward. Is everybody still going to have a job and money in their pocket? So I've been sort of thinking that through. And also, you may not see me ever again because I've got to take my 18-year-old out for a driving lesson after this.
Wow.
So if you are planning on being on the roads in Birmingham, in the Harborne area, about half an hour from now, get off. Just move off. Don't go out on the streets. Stay away. It's just not going to be safe. So I'm just telling you now.
Is this the first lesson? Is this his first lesson?
No, he's had lessons before.
Oh, okay.
But this is the first time that I'm going to sit in the car.
Oh.
You know, when you do the air brake, you know, the brake isn't really there in the passenger seat.
Wear your FFP3 mask, okay?
I am going to go full, full PPE.
Get a piece of wood as well. Get a piece of wood.
I'll be like this.
You know the brace position, Will. Just make sure you know the brace position. You'll be all right. It's fine.
So there you go. That's me.
What colour's your car?
What colour is it? It's he's actually bought a car with his own money. It's like a little Peugeot 206, sort of silvery blue. Stay away.
Yeah. Okay. So,
that's just really filled him with confidence. So I really hope he can't hear you. Chris,
he's in the car revving it up. Come on, Dad.
Chris, what about yourself? As Carl said, obviously we had an insight into some of your SOPs this week, but how have things been for you since returning from lockdown and obviously this last week?
It's been very smooth. I think for us, I'm a single-handed practitioner in private practice, so I can control what we do. So we started to crawl, not so much walk before you run, but we started to crawl before we walked. And so we are now in the walking stage. So initially we just saw 2 patients a day until we got the routine right. Then we started increasing it. So now we're seeing about 4 or 5 a day. And we still do a lot of, AGPs and routine work runs very, very smoothly. I think the only difficult thing is where, you're putting the rubber dam on and then it's a difficult mouth and then, damn, it's just torn. You can just ask somebody to go next door and reach another one. Now you've got to type in for the receptionist to come around, go and get another one. So that kind of delays things a bit. So that's a bit of a headache, really. But otherwise, everything runs quite smoothly. Hopefully, in not next week, but week after next, we'll start using 2 surgeries. We have 2 surgeries to use back. I'll be getting the hygienist back after next week, and then we'll have a little bit more to now that we've got used to how to run things. But otherwise, yeah, things run quite smoothly. I think it's because I'm quite an easy guy going down to practice. I don't pressurize things to have to earn so much, have to do so much. Terrified to make mistakes, that in case, oh my God, I took the glove off before I took the gown off. It doesn't matter. We can get so angst up with all these regulations that your whole mind is somewhere else about regulations, running, doing the work. And I just tell my staff, just watch out for each other, that we do things right. And then we just correct each other. And it's a very smooth, relaxed practice. I think, Carl, you've met, what helps a lot, I think, is to have nice people that come to your practice, nice patients.
Yeah.
And that means you're allowed to make mistakes, or you can allow to run late. And it's a very pressure-free environment, really. Unfortunately, my nurse couldn't come in today, so I had to have a locum nurse. And again, it's one of the most difficult things is to work with a locum nurse, but she was absolutely brilliant. And I just says, don't worry about making mistakes. If you can't do it, I'll do it. We'll just play by ear, and we just take it as it comes, And I think that helps a lot for many people who have not started your AGPs yet. Just take it as danger comes, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. And don't shout at your nurse, It's so easy to do things like that. So I think,
do you hear that, Carl?
Running here.
Can't hear me anyway.
Pretends not to hear you.
That's why you need the 3. I told you need the 3M. 3M. It has a speech diaphragm, so patients can actually hear you quite clearly.
Maybe that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chris, I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that you've done. What you say there is quite interesting, because one of the things that I noticed that you did is you certainly prepared yourself very admirably with things. I saw the triaging notes that you had for the patients before they come in. So there's that discussion that you have with the patient on the phone before they come in, that very detailed sort of COVID triaging form that they fill in, which I thought was very thorough. And again, not in a kind of overwhelming kind of way, but a very calm, relaxed form. Fill this in, so whether or not they've potentially at risk or not. So you categorize what risk they're in. The fogging machine and the way that you've got the bin, so that you can doff, take your stuff off and put it into the right aspect of the bin, and you wheel the bin in the surgery. I just think little things that you've done there in your practice to adapt it to your practice is really good. And the bit I love is the bell, because I didn't know how to use the messaging system. So you said you ring the bell and then Bill come and sort the door. So you've got this little bell and ding, ding, ding. If I did say if I used that at home that I wouldn't be alive. I'd be at the same risk as Will is going to be in half an hour when he takes that driving lesson. I don't think I'd survive.
That was quite funny because one of the gentlemen came in last week and he's an IT guy, you see. And for some reason, our messaging system kind of disappeared from the computer. So I rang the bell and he just started laughing like that. That's what you're laughing at. He goes, look at all this IT, extra oral vacuum and air purifier, all this high tech stuff, and you get a little bell to call your receptionist.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Even better if a butler suddenly came in, with a little tray of drinks or something.
That would even be better.
I like the sound of that.
It worked. Absolute treat.
You see, keeping it real. That's what I like.
Chris, how did you find getting hold of all your PPE stuff and mask fitting and all that kind of carry on that we all have?
I started sometime earlier on. There was a rumor that 1st of July we might be opening, you see. So I started ordering the stuff about 3 months ago. And I started literally searching all over the world. But the main thing about the mask really is I went for the reusable respirators because they are 10 million times more comfortable than the actual mask. And it would cost me probably to use the respirator about £35 every 2 months to replace the filters. If I were using an FFP3 mask, it would cost me £25,000 a year.
Is that because you're planning to use them on every single patient, even for a checkup, or are you just going to do it for AGP processes?
I actually use it for everything because the one that we have is quite different from other respirators. First of all, as I mentioned, you have a speech diaphragm. So your voice actually projects out of the mask and the patients do hear you. But more importantly is that where the inlet valves are, most respirators have 2 inlet valves. The 3M one has 4. So the breathing is very, very comfortable. And the good thing is when I put that on, my glasses don't steam up. Or a visor, it doesn't steam up at all. So I wear that most of the time, really, because it's actually very, very comfortable. And I could easily wear it all day. I wouldn't have a problem with it at all.
Okay. And was that easy to get fit tested? And
well, I was recommended a fit tester. He's absolutely brilliant. And I searched for various masks, and he suggested this particular one. So he actually brought the mask along. So all my staff, everybody wears the same respirator mask, and he brought it along. And I think I told people the Friday that I told people on Facebook who I used for it, I think that weekend he had about 100 calls.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, he's very, very thorough. He's from around the Derby area. He's very, very thorough. He knows what he's talking about. And he was absolutely fantastic. But the respirators not only will save you a huge amount of money, but they are a lot more comfortable than the actual mask, FFP3 mask.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm talking about AGPs. Will, you'll be interested in this. I got an email from my dentist, and you can start doing AGPs in Wales now.
Way.
Yeah. If you were,
as they say, or as I used to say when I lived there, just to qualify, if anybody's.
That's fantastic.
So it's official. It's official. I mean, I can't. I know I've read that many SOPs and that many regulations, and my brain gets a bit fuzzy now. So, what's the fallow time in England? I nearly said the UK. Then in England, between non-AGP, is there any?
I don't think there is one.
0. In Wales, it's 15 minutes. So I don't know whether this applies to private. I know, but the paper that they see, I'm getting wound up again already.
So I know. I'm doing
one article. It's one article. It's not even I don't think it's even peer reviewed. It's one article that somebody. I read how they did it. They got their iPhone, and they looked at the droplets that were delivered when people were speaking, and then they measured the time that it took for those droplets to drop to the floor due to gravity. And it varied between 8 and 20 minutes. So 15 minutes if a patient walks into the surgery, and for a non-AGP patient.
And have they advised people not to lick the floor as well? Is that a?
I don't think they're advising that at the moment, but that'll probably be at the end of the week. That'll probably be tomorrow when we get to lick it or not lick it.
Don't lick it. Yeah,
don't lick it.
Because if the droplets are going to the floor, you've got to be careful not to lick the floor, haven't you? Otherwise,
well, I don't know. In Wales, the gravity is a little bit less than it is in England.
That's true. So it might just.
Yeah,
that's true.
You don't have things like the 5-second rules that we all have in our house when we drop
5 second. Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. No,
that's a 5-second rule.
If you drop some nice food that you really want to eat and it lands on the floor, if you pick it up within 5 seconds, it's all right. It's not contaminated.
That sounds like the same logic from Public Health England, actually.
It's a thing that's being translated into public healthcare in the UK by Kate just now.
Yeah, I was watching a little bit of the football. Was it Wolves last night? I think I was told it was Wolves. And there was nobody in the stadium spectator-wise. But there's obviously the players on the pitch, and they've got the coaches and whoever else is. And as they were doing a substitution, they smacked each other's hands. The guy slapped him on the back, and as the guy was running on the pitch, he had a little spit. Thinking it's like an absolute nightmare. You're watching it, just thinking, what? To me, I thought I'll follow that same rules logic today. As I walked into the practice, slapped the receptionist like that, had a little spit on the floor, and but just one logic, one rule for one bunch of people, and one rule for another bunch of people. And I mean, I stopped. Actually, Chris, it's come back from yours. I did a flyby into Burger King because they do halloumi burgers, and my son likes the halloumi burgers. So I stopped in, and the Burger King, they were spraying the screens in between people tapping on the screens. You had the social distancing stickers. They were all wearing masks and gloves behind the counter, and KFC is next to it. And I looked across, and KFC, they're wearing no gloves. They had no masks. Sorry if you're watching this KFC. I won't tell you which services it was. Hotwood. And they had no protection whatsoever, and they weren't cleaning down the screens. And it was just thank God I'm not eating. Not that I probably need to be worried, but I just thought I'm glad I'm kind of grabbing a halloumi burger from somewhere that looks like it's slightly cleaner than that where they're just nothing whatsoever. And I actually thought, well, you know what, I'm going to wear a mask because I want to get used to it if I do go shopping. Not that I ever do, but I thought I'll put a mask on, and walked in. And I was absolutely astounded that no one else, apart from the people that were working in Burger King, were wearing a mask. And one of the person that was ordering, it's like product placement, Starbucks, if you want to sponsor us. That's not the same one. It's be a bit cold. But yeah, it's just fascinating to see the difference in the kind of attitude to certain things. It'll be interesting to see what happens with when we've got to wear them in the shops, and whether we adapt well to it or not.
Well, it's all visual though, isn't it? It's all visual. So you don't know that spray that somebody had put on Burger King's screens. They might have just been cleaning the screen with that, but it looked good.
It was an empty bottle.
Being seen to do the right things. But then there's all this talk about, all my patients go, oh, there's going to be a spike in November. It's going to be a spike in November. So I don't know.
I've heard the same. I've had the same conversations with the patients, like you said, Will. It's lovely to start talking again, and there's some really good. I've missed the good conversations. It's really been good to talk to people, see how they're doing. Obviously, we've talked about this. People coming out of isolation. I had one lady today that's seen no one, and because of her family being worried about her, she's been isolating totally, so she's seen nobody at all. No one's visited her at all. No social distance. It's all been done by phone calls. And her first visit today was to the practice, and then back in the car again. So it was a big thing for her, and it was really nice. And it was really nice just having a chat and a conversation, even if it was behind masks and gowns and gloves. But it was really nice just to be able to have that and kind of give her a little bit of a social life again, I suppose, even protected social life, and a necessity as well. Obviously, we needed to do what we did. And that was lovely. And I can't remember what I was going on about.
Doesn't matter. It was,
off at a tangent.
It is great for you. It's great to talk. I think what's really important as well, and I've certainly heard it from patients, is realizing that it is still you guys, is still us. Yes, we may have a bit more on, and yes, it may be a little more difficult to understand, but it is still us. The cheeky chappies, the jokes, and as you say, I think that puts the patient's minds at rest more than anything, or from my experience anyway. And
the PPE is reassuring as well. I think that they can see. I mean, they can see anyway. I think our patients have got a lot of confidence in us as dentists, because they're always seeing the nurses going around cleaning, spraying. Anyway, even before all this, and now it's just another level again.
We've said it all along, though, it's communication. So, if the patients actually know what they're going to be coming into, slightly different to perhaps your last visit, but it's still us. It's communication. I think it's key. I really do. And with go on, Carl.
I was going to say, and everybody goes quiet.
It's because you're all talked out. Carl was saying earlier, he's all talked out now.
I don't know. I'm back up again now. I've got my energy back. I'm trying to think of what I was talking about, but it's absolutely gone. I mean, it shows you guys weren't listening, because otherwise you'd well remind me.
Well, to be fair,
Burger King and Kentucky Fried Chicken.
It was just all about food.
You were saying it was good to be talking to patients again. That's what you were saying.
I think phone call, the patients really appreciate the chat, because it just relaxes them that, you're talking to them and you have a good laugh over the phone, and then as you saw our patient communication, there's a photograph of what we might look like when you walk in. It doesn't shock them.
Yeah.
And it shows them photos of the various things we'll be using, so it doesn't shock them when they actually see it live, and I think quite a lot of patients commented on how much it actually helped to attend the practice, to see what visualize what they're going to be seeing when they walk in.
Yeah, we've done a similar, very simple little video on the website, just so just really briefly, just explaining the journey, which I think has been really helpful.
I'd agree. With a couple of practices that we work out of, there's just been a couple of individuals that have said that they marginally sort of, if you like, maybe disagree with some of the procedures that are in place. So you've got, say, the principal dentist thinking it should be one thing, and you've got the support team potentially thinking it should be something else. With yourself, Chris, and you, Will, Carl, it's different for you, obviously, but with you two, when you were doing your SOPs, etc., did you sit down as a team? Did you discuss them right at the beginning, or what did you do?
Yeah, we I mean, really, I spent a bit of the lockdown time sort of referencing other people's SOPs, if you like. That's another word for stealing. And amending them, if just to kind of suit ours, because some of them were very comprehensive, and I just knew, I wasn't probably even going to read all of them, let alone, my staff. So I sort of tried to encapsulate that. And then we had our Zoom meetings, in the build-up. Mm-hmm. So I did a little timetable of returning to work, which was about 2 or 3 Zoom meetings a week, going over the SOPs and getting everyone to do their own individual risk assessments, because those seem to be the 2 important things to be ticked off with going back to work. And to be honest, I think everybody was fine with it. No resistance. There was a bit of chat about, I think, obviously the fallow period. People were hearing different things about fallow period for non-AGP, like we've just discussed. So I think that was the only thing people sort of batted around a little bit until I said there isn't one. and then that's it.
Decision made.
Well, I'm not. There wasn't any team really. I think the best SOP to use really was the FGDP one, and
Phil's gonna like you.
Who helps you to think. Well, especially FGDP one, it helps you to think through things. So I spent a lot of time reading through that, setting the thing up, checking against the public health one, make sure certain things are legal, and then I spent hours on the internet researching research papers. What I'm going to do so we actually have a piece of paper with all the links to websites, to research papers. This is what I do is officially has been researched. It doesn't just come out of my imagination, you know. So and I just set all that up, and then before we opened, we had two separate days of training, and then we just went into it. But it's much easier as a single-handed practitioner, and the staff are quite they know that I would put a lot of effort into it, so it's going to be kosher and it's going to be right. So they didn't, you know, and ask one or two things. After the first week, we sat down and they suggested a few things, so we altered that, and it literally only took about four or 5 days, and we were up and running really. The staff were brilliant, you know, they were very, very good. I think it's the danger of being too complicated with the SOP. You know, some people's SOPs are like 60 pages, but the first 10 pages is the history of what is COVID. It's like reading a kind of biological document, where really the SOP really needs to be 6 pieces of paper: before treatment, during treatment, after treatment. That's it. You know, you just have exactly what they need to do, and so the staff just got a cookery lesson book really. Whereas I understand why we're doing what we're doing, and I explain it to them, so it's easy to remember. But our SOP, I think, is actually very, very simple. It's just to the point, without any extra stuff.
Chris, what's your opinion on the 60-minute fallow time? I mean, Carl and I have expressed strong reservations, maybe, about the whole thing. But it's interesting to hear somebody's opinion on it.
One thing you wouldn't know about me, Will, is I'm a philosopher. I did a full degree in British analytic philosophy, so logic, ethics, epistemology, grounds for belief, and critique of science and evidence. That was really my strong points at the university. So for me, one of the most important things about the fallow time with Public Health England is they were basing it on all the things they don't know. Well, this is a new virus, so we better do this, we better do this. You should really set things up on what you know first. So the first thing is that you know from basic science that if you put the rubber dam on properly, the reason why we put the rubber dam on, because you now have a dry field. And therefore, if you have a dry field, it means there is no saliva. If there's no saliva, there is no contaminated aerosol. To say it any other way is just illogical and unscientific. So if you've got the rubber dam on properly, and you've got your high volume suction there, which the research shows it removes 95% of aerosol, and that's 95% of non-contaminated aerosol. So there is no contaminated aerosol. You cannot deny logic. And then we have I think I showed how we have an extraoral suction. And when we do AGP, I have a particle monitor right next to it, and there's one behind me and right at the floor of me too. You see, it was interesting that the local nurse who was helping me out today was looking at it, and then and after we did the 2 AGPs, I explained to her what it was, and she says, "Well, it hasn't been moved at all. It just stayed at baseline." I said, "Exactly, but there's actually nothing going there." So the air is actually clean in our surgery, completely clean, But then, if you put the rubber dam on, well, if you have no contaminated aerosol, why do you have to wait an hour? Because Public Health England, for me, their logic is so most unscientific. They say open the window and you have 6 exchanges of air, but they don't say how large that window. That has to be essential to say what the opening of the window has to be, what size it has to be in order relation to the room. So they just give you a generic example, which can actually be quite dangerous, because I actually saw on YouTube a particular area's SOP whereby they said, and we leave the window open. Now, when you look at the window, it's one of these hotel windows that opens about 2 inches. That was it. But they ticked the box. We open the window for an hour. So that is not going to have any exchange of air. So for us, our exchange, given that we have no contamination, we don't need an hour at all. It's different if you're not using rubber dam and you're just slapping everything else, But
okay, Chris,
time at all.
If I'm making you the supreme world leader of dentistry and you can make all the rules, what fallow time are you going to tell us that we have to use? Because you can't just say it depends. You've got to deliver a piece of paper to the dental world who's waiting on everything you say. What do you reckon? What should we go for?
So the fallow time, well, first of all scientific evidence here is relative and conditional. So a fallow time, I would say, is if you use a properly applied rubber dam, meaning you have a dry field and you have a high volume suction, meaning an engineer has been to your practice, attached a monitor to check exactly what your airflow is, not just hearing it. And that's what we've done. And it showed that we have a high volume suction. And you have, at the end of the day, an extra oral suction right above the patient, and right next to you, you have a monitor. Well, then I would say your fallow time is 0. There is no contamination there. However, for me, it's important that we have at least 15 minutes. It's just a break, because all that gear, because let the nurse we doff, go upstairs, drink some water, a cup of tea, and then come back down, go into level 2, and then start wiping things down, and it's just to let the swab to settle down. It takes 5 minutes, but 15 minutes, I think, is healthier for the mind and the soul, really.
And Carl, if I transferred power to you.
Oh, no. Dangerous.
Is he the wrong person to be given power? Would he use it wisely or dangerously?
Do you know, it's a really fascinating one, isn't it? Because I would be doing lots of detail. Well, I've already done it. I'd be looking at all the available evidence that I had towards that I could look at that would involve what I would regard as the risk in performing dentistry, AGP or non-AGP. I'd then make a decision: is there any viable risk? And then what do you do if you perceive that there is a risk? What do you advise? And then I would probably give the power back to the individuals that run those practices and say, look, if you wish to wear a respirator for this procedure, then that's absolutely fine. But if you feel comfortable wearing a mask, then that's also absolutely fine. And I'm not going to worry, or I'm certainly not going to bring any kind of law upon you. But, if you're going to wear nothing, then maybe I'm going to get a little bit irritated. So I would kind of pass the power back to the individual practice teams and say, look, this is what we know. This is the knowledge. This is the information that you can look at and decide in your own practices as to what you deem is required for a mask or PPE within your teams and what you want to do. And it's almost like, this is what we know. There you go. Use this information. So I'd collate that information in a package and then pass it back and say, you're all clinicians, you all understand how this works. You've been working with patients that are potentially infected since you've qualified and before you qualified on those patients. This isn't anything that contamination wise isn't anything that we've had to deal with before, but yet the consequences are very different, if that makes any sense. It's not something new. A pathogen, a virus isn't anything new. We deal with these all the time. So that's what my power would be. I'd give the power back.
You asked, Will. You asked.
Oh.
So what about you?
I was waiting for 5 minutes or something like that,
Well, do you know what? I am kind of in that zone where I don't understand the difference between what we call an aerosol generated procedure, where you're picking a drill up and drilling a tooth, compared to a patient that coughs. And that I find that I can't quite get my head around how you can define the two are any different. And in fact, if anything, a patient that comes into the surgery that you're not doing an aerosol generated procedure on and coughs without their mask is potentially more infected than you picking a drill up and adjusting a tooth in the patient's mouth. And there's research that shows the level of not viable virus, droplet virus levels in saliva compared to that in respiratory. And again, not viable measurements. So these, you got me going, you see, Will, these measurements, we haven't got that viable virus measurements. So when you're talking about these two different procedures, well, actually, there isn't really a difference between the two procedures in the way that we should be acting for our patients. So it's either respirators for all, which is what Chris is sort of alluding that he's doing, or masks for all, but certainly some form of PPE for everything, so whether that's a mask and a visor or whether that's a respirator and a visor. And that's what it probably comes down to. The fallow time after that, well, then what you're asking for, if it's 0 and a patient's coughed in that surgery, what's the risk when the next patient comes in of those droplets being up in the air? Is it higher than an aerosol generator procedure? Chris, you've got the equipment. And that's what we might find out from, the research that's coming out. And what I'm not hearing is anybody going to do the research on the viable viral count that's being delivered. And I think it comes back to the triaging the patients. If you do your best with that, you triage your patients, you shield those patients that are potentially at risk if they do catch COVID, you stop those patients that are potentially spreaders. And I think this story of these patients that are asymptomatic and spreaders, again, the science, which isn't robust, suggests that those patients aren't really big spreaders. They're not super spreaders. They are few and far between. So it's unlikely that you're going to get somebody that's asymptomatic being a big spreader of the virus. And then again, they have to, be able to spread it. And I think if you're wiping down, you're getting rid of the formites, the droplets, then you're mitigating. We talked about that last time, but you're mitigating for it. So yeah, I am, quite comfortable working with the PP that I've got. And, and I understand that other people are worried. I've got patients that are very, very nervous, and I've got patients that are very blasé. But I think that this kind of what also gets me a little bit confused is this one rule for pubs and one rule for shops and one rule if you're outdoors and one rule for dental practices. And anyway, you asked me.
I had a very good demonstration of how, in a sense, lethal an aerosol actually is in spreading in the practice. It was quite interesting yesterday. I was testing the vitality test with Endofrost. So the monitor was behind me, about 4 or 5 feet behind me. And I was holding the cotton wool right next to me. And all I did was, shh, that was it. And I turned to the patient to put it against the upper right 5. In that short period of time, the monitor behind me went ballistic. It just went beep, 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 beep. And this red light just shot right across. And it was amazing that I just went shh and did that, and that gaseous aerosol just went straight into the air and went behind me and landed onto the meter. I remember my nurse and I both kind of turned around and what was that, and you could just see the meter went ballistic, And therefore, with that experience, whenever I do aerosol driven procedures, I am so confident there is no aerosol because it just stays quiet and it stays at 0 or 1. Yesterday, it just went ballistic because that little tiny shh, that was all I did on the Endofrost. And within seconds, it picked it up behind me and it just went ballistic. So that even convinces me, I know that our air is clean because if there's anything hitting the monitor, it will register this straight away. But the thing, I think, yeah, with high volume suction and rubber dam, you don't need an hour to hang around, it's crazy, really.
Does that answer your question, Will?
Yes.
What about you? If we gave the power to Kate's coming your way, by the way.
Well,
I'm going to put the crown on your head.
Yes. First of all, I'd tax all dentists, like 50% of their earnings would go straight to me.
I've missed a trick. I've missed a trick.
Do you know what? Mine's almost a sort of reverse negative answer, and certainly not 60 minutes. And I'm trying to think of something concise rather than talking for about 20 minutes like you did and still not give me an answer.
Politician, you see, Will.
Yeah, no, I did give you an answer. I don't think that dental aerosols are as risky as they're being made out that they are. And I think that's the thing. They're not. Everybody's sort of saying that dental aerosols are this big infective thing that we need to be worried about, and I disagree with that. I don't think they are.
I think I'd probably err on that side and say if you've got a well ventilated surgery, which may be an open window or what have you, then I would probably almost say nothing.
That's kind of what I was saying.
Will you
See, I
manage that?
encapsulated that in 32 seconds.
As a mental note going forward, all questions go to Will Murphy.
Yeah, but don't forget, he taxed at 50%, so it's an expensive answer.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to cost you, but you've got a lot more freedom to do your dentistry. You see, so
yeah,
Fantastic.
true. Yeah. Wow. Do we have to pay tax now, or can we wait until January? Like,
no, now I'm ruthless about this. Got to pay
That's a
your
very
dues.
quick answer, Will. You have been thinking today. You did say.
I wouldn't be taxing dentists. I'd be taxing politicians and anybody that works at Public Health England
Public Health,
and
yeah, absolutely.
they're on HSE.
Yeah, they're on 80% tax for starters.
Yeah, and the GDC.
Straight off the bat. Yeah.
I'm going to edit that.
On that note.
Yeah, can we cut that out?
Yeah.
Live. What?
Apparently, Boris and Matt Hancock is going to be making a very significant announcement today.
They're pregnant.
It was at lunchtime. They were making a very big announcement tonight. Apparently, I don't know what it is.
Oh,
it must have been leaked by now. Usually these.
We will.
Well, yeah, 5 o'clock, I think.
I'm the new leader of dentistry.
Yeah.
We are not worthy, Will Murphy. Well,
listen, it's not going to matter anyway because I'm a goner in half an hour.
Oh well, stop it.
Dress up like the Stig, mate. Dress up like the Stig.
Stop it. On that note, guys, if there's nothing else to discuss, then we'll bring this little webinar to a close.
Lots to discuss.
Bite-sized webinars.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you very much again, each and every one of you on the panel. We hope everybody out there has found it useful, interesting, humorous, etc. We will be back next week, minus one person on the panel. Hopefully not. He might make it through the drive-in.
Yeah, good luck.
Thanks, everybody.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.